Okay, so for chapter 13, it was all about leadership in crisis. I felt like this chapter was fairly interesting. It was cool to learn about the ways that an organization should deal with crisis and you yourself. Some of the main points is that first, a crisis is any major unpredictable event that can threaten an organization. Um, this is anything from economic, informational, physical, HR, reputational, or psychopathic acts, and even natural disasters. Because all these things are very hard to deal with, and this chapter talked about a lot about what to do during those times. And then, regardless of the type of the crisis, it always goes through the same series of stages. The first stage is called the pre-crisis stage, and it's pretty normal, but the group should be alert to warning signs and must also be able to signal that a crisis is developing. That crisis event stage, it begins when trouble actually breaks out and ends when when that danger is over. And then last, there's the post-crisis phase. This is when you evaluate and you analyze what happened during the crisis, and when the immediate danger is past, you just resume operations as normal. So each of these stages requires different communication skills and also different strategies. As a leader, you have to be ready for crisis. So first, you have to recognize that danger is there by scanning the external and the internal environments. Basically, just have to be on your toes. And then you identify the trouble spots or the vulnerabilities where maybe during crisis there would be trouble. Then you have to develop a crisis management plan, and that should involve a crisis management team because you should not be able to, or you should have a group of people ready to avert the crisis whenever it does arise. And then you have to build organizational credibility. Um, so next, this is what's the chapter went into talking about all about what's happening during the crisis. So you need to initiate the action by convincing the organization that a crisis exists in the first place. Um, Once you do this, you implement the crisis management plan and you mobilize the crisis management team. So things you do is like you coordinate activities such as like redeploying resources, institute new systems, and then contain the damage and work with outside agencies to prevent or to avert the crisis. And then when you act as a spokesperson, you must appear before the media and provide information to protect all the victims. You don't want bad talk about people that may or may not have gotten injured during the crisis. Um, in the midst of the emergency, you have to engage in vigilant decision making. You need to resist the temptation that a lot of people usually fall into to reach decisions quickly and seek out, but instead you need to just seek out new information by reevaluating the choices based off of what you end up discovering. And then after the threat is passed, then you have to restore your reputation for the organization. Um, what you need to do is learn from experience, build resilience, and promote healing. Basically, just rally the troops. Get the entire organization coming together to talk about what happened during the threat and then how we better can deal with it if it happens again. And then the chapter went on to talk about the situational crisis communication theory, which means you base your image restoration strategy on the level of the organizational threat. Um, the rebuild strategy should be used usually when the organization is blamed for the crisis. And then after all this, you need to learn from this crisis. So this is facilitated by keeping record during the crisis, so that in retrospective you can look back and say, here's what we did right and here's what we did wrong. The ultimate goal of this is just to create high reliability within the organization, and make sure that everyone takes their actions that they took during the time into account, so that they can look back and change, or maybe do the same what they did. And that is all.